So this is the subject matter expert interview for the REFUTE statement. Hi, can you tell me, or can you start out by just introducing yourself?
Sure, Jess. My name's Al Pringle. I'm president of Keystone Real Estate Group in State College. I've been here for about 20 years, actually 20 years last year, so almost 21 in State College. My background is I have a civil engineering degree from Bucknell University and an MBA from Pitt. Nobody likes Pitt. We all like Penn State. And I've been in this position in the development business for that full 20 years while I've been here in State College.
Okay. Can you tell me how you came to learn about this issue and how you formed your opinion about it?
Sure. Megan Tuttle had contacted us probably 6 or 8 months ago just for a general introduction session when she was coming to town and getting organized. We met her at that point, and then as this process came through her office, she had remembered her discussions with us and reached out to me as a potential expert witness in the process.
Okay. And can you give us your position on this ordinance?
Sure. When Megan reached out, she had sent to me kind of the instructions, the purpose of the ordinance, a little background work, and then the ordinance itself as well, and asked for a simple writing of, do you believe whether or not this ordinance had met the purpose it was intended to create? And so that was my reading and writing from it. And so I'll start by saying this. I ended in the negative to say that I don't believe it met the intended purpose, and I'll just touch on a few bullet points as to why I thought that was. First and foremost, we discussed a moment ago, but I'm an engineer and I love equations. Equations say to me, these variables create a result. And in this case, I thought the variables weren't clearly defined and the result wasn't clearly defined, the purpose itself. For example, the purpose said in the first paragraph or first sentence, it was intended to achieve the greater community good. I'm not sure what that means. A greater community good means a lot of different things to a lot of different interests and interest groups, and I couldn't define that. In my writing, I said greater community good could mean things like, does it have public safety? Is it protecting property values? Or does it generally organize the utilization of land? Those are things that could be conceived as greater community good, not defined in the ordinance, but my own definitions. From there, I described as to how I felt the ordinance in its current draft format did not meet public safety, protection of property value, and or being generally organized in the land. A couple examples of which: public safety. The location of this overlay in the downtown area is in a place where there's significant restrictions on infrastructure. There's no traffic signalization, there are no bike paths, there are limited sight lines for vehicular traffic in that area, and it really doesn't contain the supporting and feeder infrastructure of roadways. It's on the curve of Beaver Avenue into College Avenue. Calder Alley is a feeder to it. And then the only one probably supporting is East College Avenue as you travel west into town. The protection of property value, I think if you went through the downtown, there are properties that have a lot of the same intended purposes of this overlay district that would be impacted negatively by more supply. On the other hand, there are residential areas on that side of town that would say they're going to negatively impact my neighborhood by the density that it creates and the utilization in that area. That, coupled with the fact that it's such a small geographic area, basically a one-block area in the downtown, said to me it's generally organized but awful small if there's an intended use for a greater community good out of the land area. Second, as I went further in and going back to equations and variables, variables have definitions and equations have definitions, and what the ordinance lacked, in my opinion, was definition on any number of terms. One of the examples I gave was graduate student or professional. I don't know what that means. Is it graduate student full-time, graduate student part-time, online, professional? Is there an income level, or how do we define those types of terms? They may be understood generally, but at least the ordinance didn't specifically define what they were there for and being able to be measured against as to whether or not they met that ordinance. I'll skip over, well, I guess I can contribute a little on the ordinance. It creates kind of an undocumented occupancy process where owners are defined as broadly as just owning a unit. Perfect example would be mother and father buy a unit with daughter, and daughter allows 3 unrelated relatives to live there. Is that an owner-occupied unit or an undergraduate student unit? There's a potential for conflict. It lacked some measurable restrictions. The example I gave was it allowed for pedestrian access on the first floor in the retail area, but didn't say how much could be pedestrian access. I went so far as to show by example, if I have an ATM in the first floor, that's a commercial use and an allowable use, and is the rest available for pedestrian access and common space? Are we really trying to promote first floor commercial use? And if we are, we should prompt that with a restriction as to what the minimum is required to be at that level. One of the sections that I think I held in I'll say lowest opinion was things that say whether or not a wall is 50 feet long and it's desirable or not. I think those are subjective ordinances, not objective or quantitative ordinances where you can measure. You can certainly measure 50 feet and a 1 foot setback, but to whose eye is that desirable or undesirable? A statement like that would be more in an architectural review board than it would be in a land use ordinance, in something that we were presented here. Parking had to do with the distance of how far it would be from the site, within 400 feet of the property. Within 400 feet of that general area, there is no utilization for larger parking areas. So by allowing it is great, but the actualization of it being used is even more important. If you can get it within 400 feet, fantastic. If you can't, it should be left out of the ordinance and not a measurable statistic to achieve a variance from or an increase from. Fees and lieu for off-site parking, all fantastic. It's great to have more dense parking. The unfortunate part is it didn't give a restriction as to how far away that could be. Building a parking garage on the west end of town with the money from the east end of town doesn't serve the purpose between the two. Generally speaking, those fee and lieu have to be applied to a more restricted area. And then lastly on that, the parking was noted as public parking being defined as a more efficient manner. What's more efficient and how is it measured? Going right back to always the equation, the variables, and what do they equal when you sum them together. In conclusion, the biggest thing I want to say about this is I was critical the whole way through the process, but I think that's what we were asked to do. We were asked to look at it with a critical eye and determine one way or the other. I could have easily gone to the other side of this, provided a few more definitions and clarifications on what was intended here. I believe in zoning. I think zoning is a good thing. I think we all do. It serves a good of the community that I believe to be defined as it creates safety. It doesn't put hazardous waste incinerators in the backyards of residential neighborhoods. It doesn't create density where it's not supported by infrastructure. It helps to protect property values. And those were a few of the things I mentioned at the beginning. I don't think this ordinance creates any of that in that regard. It was more of a very subjective right on what we'd like to see there. The owners of that land have certain inherent rights that they own as by title to that land. Going back to King George, that's how titles got passed and deeds became titles to land. That title or that deed on that land gives that owner an inherent right to use it the way they see fit and the way they see desirable. The specific uses as defined by zoning determine whether or not they want to purchase that land, and once they do, those rights are there. Going on subjective matter is more related, as I said, to historical review boards and things of that nature that don't apply to zoning, and I felt the read of this was slanted heavily in that direction of an ability to use incentive to get more versus the inherent right that comes with the property that was deeded by title to the owners. I closed with a statement from Thomas Jefferson that just says, the true foundation of a Republican government, and that's not Democrat Republican, that's just Republican government, is the equal right of every citizen in his person and property and in their management. It's a statement of one of our founding fathers, and it's interesting to think that zoning, an extrapolation of property and their management, was in the founding fathers' statements of what we do. So we believe in it, but we also believe in the right that comes with it.